So on Tuesday, when the internet crashed, we had started talking about the zone of proximal development and just reviewing what the zone of proximal development is. And remember, the zone of proximal development is the difference between what the child can do independently and what a child needs help from a more knowledgeable person. So when you look at this visually, you have this image here where in the middle you have what they can learn on their own, then what they can learn with help, and the information that's beyond their reach. And so they need to be have someone to help them to move this information beyond their reach to that which they can learn. And the way that this occurs is through several different ways. So to facilitate cognitive development, then you need to, one way you can do this is through intersubjectivity, where you're working together with different levels of understanding and merging knowledge to complete the task. So you, the child is receiving help to be able to learn that information. So people work together. So for example, when you are in a group with someone, you know information, you bring that information to the group, the other person knows information, they bring that information to the group, and you work together so you build an understanding, a deeper understanding of the information. So the adult is providing that information that they bring to the group, and the child is able to expand on their understanding. So you can see here in this picture, the child may have a basic concept of what a circle is, what a square is, what a triangle is. But if you look at like this green piece here that's lying on the ground, from the child's perspective, if they're looking at it from this side view, they may not recognize it as a circle. So the adult comes along and picks it up and shows it to them from a front view, and they can see that is a circle, and they can determine that that piece does indeed go into this space. So they have a very remote understanding of what a circle is, and so you have to help them to expand that knowledge. Another way is through scaffolding, and we did touch on this on Thursday. And scaffolding is support system, just like you would have this support system along the side of a building when a building's being built. We are adding support for the child to help them to be able to gain that knowledge. So we're setting up the situation. We're making it easier for the child to have success. And then we gradually pull it back. So for example, if we're asking the child, well, here's a picture of a cat, here are two, and we wait for the child to respond. Well, if they don't, we can say, this is one cat, here are two, and then giving them that phonemic cue, or helping them cat, and then gradually backing off to where eventually you say, here is one cat, here are two, and you expect the child to be able to produce it. And then you even drop off that carrier phrase where you say, here's one cat. What is it when we have more than one cat? And then hopefully the child will be able to respond over time, and then you can back off on the amount of support that you give the child. And scaffolding is a technique that you will use throughout your career as a speech language pathologist. You use it for all levels of care, from infants to geriatrics. So we provide support and then back off the support when it's no longer needed. So here we watched a video about scaffolding in Vygotsky.
One way to scaffold or support children's learning is to provide hints. A hint provides just a little more information to help the child arrive at a more accurate response or action. A hint can be given verbally, or it could be a picture or a gesture.
One idea would be to use the picture. I see you have the tail of the airplane. What else comes next? I see 2 wings. All right, let's see.
Another way to scaffold children's learning is to offer a range of possible answers. When the teacher sees that a child is struggling to come up with an answer or response, the teacher gives 2 or 3 possibilities from which the child can choose.
Is that plastic or paper? Plastic. So can you put it in the plastic bin? Very nice.
Here's another way to scaffold children's learning. The teacher can encourage the child to use additional resources to help the child understand the concept or idea.
We haven't done dolphin yet. I don't think I have a picture of a dolphin. Where can we find a picture?
There's a stamp of it.
There is a stamp of it. Where can we get a picture of a dolphin? Was there a dolphin in the seahorse book? Oh, hey, I see a book over here. This book says about fish. Do you think it has a dolphin in it?
Additional resources include books, visual reminders in the classroom, or other children.
So there you were able to see some different modes of providing scaffolding. So we've talked about Piaget, and we talked about Vygotsky and his theories of the cognitive development. Now we're going to talk about the dynamic systems theory. This theory provides a look into the complexity of each learning situation of a child as they're learning to speak single words. So according to this system, this theory, this child's system, the child's environment is constantly changing, and their ability to learn cognitive tasks such as higher level thinking, reasoning skills, and so forth, their ability to learn all those higher level skills is going to be based on multiple things that are happening at that point in time. And for every child, that's going to look a little bit different. So if it is the emerging product of real-time interactions, so real-time interactions that are occurring is going to affect the child's cognitive development. Physically, how are they developing physically? As they develop, if they're using their brain structures in order to enhance their physical ability at that time, children have a hard time multitasking from that perspective as far as using the brain neural components in order to expand on their physical abilities and their communication abilities at the same time. So if they are in a growth spurt, a physical growth spurt, then their cognition may not be developing as much at that point in time. So according to this theory, you have to look at the whole system of the child in respect to how they develop communication. And the state in which they're developing their cognitive, not communication, their cognitive skills is also going to be affected by what just happened prior to, what life situation just happened prior to them, and what is happening right then and now. So what kind of an environment have they been growing up in before this point? Have they been in a privileged environment? Have they been in a low income environment? Or they've been burdened by things that are happening in their household? So all of that will affect their ability to learn, particularly cognitive skills. So the dynamic systems theory relates new learning to situations. So the child learns, and their situation in which they're they are in is going to affect how they are learning. And it's also going to be affected by their perception of what's happening around them. So then that's going to take us into a discussion about perception. So when we talk about perception, everybody perceives things differently and responds to that perceptions differently. You know, looking at this picture is painted on a flat surface, but it gives the perception of depth. And some people, myself included, would be leery to step over or across that picture. You know, just because of the way our brain is wired and we see things. So let's talk about what is perception. So the perception is the process by which a person selects, organizes, integrates, and interprets the sensory stimulation that we receive. And so what are our senses? So the 5 senses are sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. And we use this sensory information, and it allows us to perceive knowledge and make sense of information that's coming in. So we use our senses to help us determine what the meaning is of the things that we're receiving. So the relationship between perception and cognition. So before we can perform a cognitive function, first of all, we have to sort through the sensations that we're receiving. So going back to that image of a blowout, you hear the sound, you feel the difference in your car, okay? So you receive those sensations and you have to recognize why they're important. Oh man, that's not right. My car shouldn't be doing that. It sounds like something happened to my tire, because then you're hearing that click, 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 click. Okay, if you've never gotten a flat tire, that's what it kind of sounds like. Then you have to decide, is this important? Do I need to, should I just ignore it? Or is it something I need to do something with? So maybe you roll over or hit a bump in the road. Okay, you hear that, but you realize, it's not something I need to worry about. You heard it, you felt it, but it didn't cause any issues with your car, so you could ignore that one. Then you have to now take those senses, before you can choose to ignore it or act on it. Where does it fit in my schema? Okay, how do I integrate this information? How do I need to interpret it? And that happens in a minute fraction of a second, because you may think about how quickly you make a decision, particularly in that case. So your perception is related to your cognition, because you have to decide if what you're perceiving is important. How quickly do you touch something that's hot that you quickly move your hand? Okay, so you immediately get that sensation. You understand that meaning, that this is not a good thing for me to be doing. Let me move my hand. All right, so you quickly figure out that information, use that information so that you can problem solve and reason. All right, so let's talk specifically about certain perceptions. So visual and tactile perception, and our little ones. Visual perception is a great sense for developing that bond between the infant and the caregiver. Infants can perceive a human's face and can learn to direct their attention very quickly. This is the very first sense that they can control. Vision. Visual perception is the very first sense that they can control.
and they can usually, within hours of being born, they can follow and recognize mom's face or caregiver's face. They can follow movements and they recognize mom's face. So at 3 months, they have more control over their eye movements, so much so that they can perceive facial differences. So now they can recognize mom versus dad. There's a cute little video about this dad who had this like full long beard, and you've seen it. And I mean, I think the baby's only maybe about 3-4 months old or whatever. And so he's playing with her, and he shaved off his beard and had his face covered. And when he took the face covering off, the baby cried because she didn't really recognize, his facial features changed. So it's a very good example of visual perception. So at 4 to 6 months, they can respond more positively to a smile. So they're recognizing that indication that a smile is a positive thing. At 5 to 8 months, they can perceive their own face, but they don't understand who the vision is in the mirror. So they can look in the mirror and perceive that that's another baby or another individual, but they don't recognize yet that it's them. Okay? And let's see. So with increasing memory, the more they build their memory of different objects, their visual perception of objects, then they will start to elicit a response. So when they see mom come in, they may get all excited and they start waving their legs and their arms and smile and laugh. When they see a bottle come into vision, they start reacting to it. Okay, so they recognize, hey, I know that thing gives me food. So, they recognize those things. So, and they also get, they also explore objects. That goes along with that tactile perception. They use their touch. They put everything in their mouth. That's how they're exploring it. So they have that visual and that tactile perception. They put it in their mouth. They understand how it feels. Okay, now let's talk about auditory perception. Auditory perception is most important for speech and language. Why is that? Yeah, you learn the language you hear. And so they need to hear the language, okay, in order to build their communication skills. We're going to talk more about this in chapter 4, but deaf children learn the same way as hearing children up to a certain point. We'll talk about that more in the next chapter. But auditory perception, their ability to hear, is most important for speech and language development, because they have to hear it over and over and over again in order for it to get into their memory. When they are newborn, I'm sorry?
Yes, ma'am. Going back to visual and tactile perception.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that visual perception is the first sense a child can control.
Right.
And the tactile perception is the ability to use their mouthing senses.
Right. They tactile, they put things in their mouth, they touch them, they bang them, okay? All the different things they do with objects in order to learn more about it. Those are vision, tactile, and auditory are the primary three senses that newborns rely on. It's how they learn about the world around them. They can discriminate sound durations. They can, if something's too loud for them, that they will get upset. Okay, so they can also localize. As they develop, they learn that ability to localize to sound. Actually, that's one thing that they, a sense that they test right after birth. They will do a hearing test, which is where they see if the child can localize to the sound. So they will play or ring a bell or some kind of noise to see if the child will turn their head to the sound. They also start to refine their auditory perception where they can determine different pitches, which helps them determine if that's mommy talking or daddy talking. Okay, so they develop that. About 3 months, even before that, even in utero, they have found that in utero, children are learning about auditory sound because they're hearing information in utero. So that's why, a lot of parents will play music or talk to the child, in utero, because they can perceive auditory sounds while still in mom's womb. About 3 months of age, they become more attentive to words. At 5 months, they begin to respond to their own name. So 3 months, they're more attentive to words. At 5 months, they can respond to their own name. I don't think I have this. No, I don't have that on the slide. At 6 months, they can respond to the word mommy or daddy. So someone can say, oh, mommy's coming, and they will respond. That's about 6 months. At 8 months, they begin to store sound patterns for words. So they start to understand patterns, but not yet meanings. So grandma, grandpa, Grandma Betty. So they understand that pattern, Grandma Betty. But they don't necessarily have the meaning yet for that. So they'll understand the sound patterns before they understand the meaning. That's about 8 months. And then 8 to 10 months is when they begin to comprehend, to build a comprehension of words, to make the connection between the word and the meaning. Okay? Doesn't mean they're not learning prior to this, but they start to make the connection between, oh, when she says that, this is what she means. When she says Pixie, she's talking about the cat. Okay? So that's when they start making those connections. Okay. So we have the Piaget's theory, we have Vygotsky's theory, we have the dynamic systems theory, and we also have the perspective groundbreaking theories or information. So now we're going to move on and talk about executive functions. Executive functions are the set of control processes that allow us to maintain attention, inhibit irrelevant associations, and use working memory. So we have speech, which is outward production, or oral production of communication. We have language, which is using grammatical structures to be able to produce semantic sentences. We have cognition, which it relates to our higher level thinking skills, our ability to problem solve and reason. And now we're talking about our executive functions, which is this is how we can attend to things and our memory for things. How do we develop this memory? Well, it is our executive functions. This is what allows us to monitor and regulate our behavior. This is our moral compass. And when children go and are evaluated for kindergarten, they do a test to make sure that they are ready for kindergarten. This is one of the things they look at. Because if the child isn't ready to absorb and store information, they may not be quite ready for kindergarten. So our ability to process information is not limitless. We can analyze and synthesize only a certain amount of information at a time. We can get overwhelmed. So for example, let's say that you have a test. You're studying for the test. And while you're at the table studying for this test, then your friend comes and says, hey, there's going to be a party tomorrow night. It's going to be at John's house at 102 Cardinal Drive. And here's his phone number. And you're like, huh? What? Wait, you can't process it all because it's too much at one time. So that's what I mean by it is not limitless. It does have its limits. Multitasking while you're trying, and depending on the intensity of what it is that you're trying to recall, is going to affect how much you're going to be able to develop. Your executive functioning is a slowly developing process. It is slow to mature. This is what keeps us on track. It allows us to monitor and regulate our behaviors, okay? How many of you have seen a mom, or you've been in a store where there's like a mom's with her little 5-year-old and the little girl's like, Mommy, that lady looks ugly. And she's like, oh my God. Okay? That child definitely does not have the executive functions yet, okay? It's part of learning those social skills. All right, so let's talk about, that's executive functions, which is our memory, our working memory and attention and our moral compass. Let's also talk about attention and memory. How does attention affect memory? Well, let's see what you think. How does attention affect memory? What is attention?
I feel like the more you pay attention to something, the more you will remember it.
Okay, what was that?
The more you concentrate and pay attention.
Okay, Cece?
You said what is attention?
Uh-huh.
I think it's being able to focus, focus on one thing at a time.
Okay, so Kari said it was the more you pay attention, the more you will remember something, and Cece was saying that attention is your ability to focus, and that is correct. Both of you are correct. The more that, the less you attend to something, the less you're going to be able to remember it, okay? You have to work to put things in memory. So memory is the awareness of a learning situation, and it is an active cognitive process. I don't think I have that there. Nope, this is not on a slide. So it's the awareness of the learning situation, and it's an active cognitive process, which means you have to actively figure out how you're going to remember this. You need this for learning. It's highly interactive for learning. So I don't know about the rest of you, but cell phones have ruined my memory, because if you ask me what my daughter's phone number is, I'm like, I don't know. Because I have to go and find her number in my phone. Now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, before we had cell phones, I could rattle off everybody's phone number. Even my hairdresser, you know, my doctor, whatever. I can't do that anymore because I don't have a need to attend to it. So attention makes a difference in how we remember things. And I actually am trying to actively, but it's very difficult. I'm trying to actively learn my children's phone numbers, because if your phone dies, you need to have and you have to use someone else's phone, you need to know their phone number. That's my cognitive brain trying to reason and problem solve, because I've had it happen before. My phone died, I didn't have I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know their phone number. It's in my phone, which it doesn't work. Okay, so attention and memory, active process. You need to attend in order to be able to purposely remember something. We have the capacity, which is really amazing if you think about it, to maintain and hold relevant information, especially when there are internal or external distractions or interferences in the environment. The reason we can do this is because we have this thing called working memory. So if you go sit in the Union, you can sit there and have a conversation with your friend while ignoring all the other things that are going on around you. If you are Zooming one class in the computer lab while 6 or 7 other people are Zooming another class, you can put them in the background and put them out of your mind and focus on your class. That is because of working memory. Working memory allows us to focus and process relevant information. So let's talk some more about what working memory is. So working memory is a process. It develops as children mature. We hold our messages in our minds while we're processing. It allows the brain to hold different details. So we focus our attention, as you see here. We focus our attention on something. We take that information, we manipulate it. Okay, so like, let's say the phone number. Like I had to learn my new office number, 448-4139. Well, I had to literally write it down, focus on it. It's 4139, 4139. And then our administrative assistant said, any number that starts with a 4 is going to be 448. It starts with a 2, it's going to be 493. Hey, that was awesome. That gave me a cue to remember the first 3 digits. So I manipulated that information. I now attached It starts with a 4, so it's 448. Okay, so I manipulated the information, and then I got it into a temporary storage. But in order for me to get it into my long-term memory, I had to keep rehearsing it and writing it down. 4139, 448, 4139. And then I had to keep repeating it and processing it. And so over and over, I kept doing that until finally I got it from working memory to long-term memory. So it's an executive control system that interacts, coordinates, controls, and regulates our 2 storage systems. I don't think I have, oh yeah, I do. Here we go. Okay. So working memory allows us to focus voluntary and executive processing and maintenance of task-relevant information. So when you have to memorize something, when you have to recall something like your notes for your quiz or your test, you are focusing. You are voluntarily doing this. You are processing and maintaining that information. And you're figuring out the best way to code it so that you can get it back out of your head and regurgitate it. And there are 2 storage systems for working memory. You have the phonological loop, and the phonological loop is temporary storage. And this is where you can rehearse it. You say it over and over and over and over again. You rehearse it. Phonological, remember, phonological is sound. So you're over and over, you're saying it again, either out loud or in your head. So the phonological loop is temporarily stores verbal information. So phonological loop temporarily stores verbal information so that you can rehearse it over and over again. Then you have the visual spatial sketch pad. This is your visual spatial sketch pad in your head, where you, and physically as well as mentally, where you picture yourself recalling this information. It helps you to be able to manipulate that mental information. So we do this all the time, okay? When you are going to have to give a speech, you mentally picture yourself doing it. So that helps you to be able to, if you see yourself succeeding, if you see yourself doing it, it's going to help you to be able to do it. Athletes do this all the time. There are athletes who mentally process how they're going to race. Like if they're a track, they mentally envision themselves going through this process, and it helps them to be able to recall the muscle movements and the actions that they need to do in order to succeed. So we know that memory is very difficult, right? Because it's hard to attend. You have to work at it. So the more attention you give to information or a process, the better you will be at recalling it. If your attention is divided, like you are listening to me while you are on your phone or your computer doing something else, then you're not going to recall it as easily because you are dividing your attention. Okay, last thing, theory of mind. And I do want to get through theory of mind. Theory of mind is the ability to understand the minds of other people. So we've had cognition, which is your higher level thinking skills. We've talked about executive functioning, which is your being able to socially have social tact, and we also talked about it's also your executive function is your working memory, and we've talked about memory and how you're able to develop your memory. Now we're talking about theory of mind. This is our ability to understand our mental world, our own and others. These are our emotions, our beliefs, our desires, our thoughts, and our perceptions. So look at all these things that child has to learn about. I mean, look at everything that has to develop in that infant to where we are now. And we still are developing our theory of mind, because our ideas and our perceptions and our intentions change every day depending on what we hear. We might say we're going to vote for candidate A, and then we hear something about candidate A, and now we're going to vote for candidate B. And we hear something about candidate B, and now we don't know who to vote for, you know? So it constantly keeps changing. So all of that information goes into our theory of mind. So this is our ability to understand the minds of other people and to comprehend and predict, along with our beliefs, our thoughts, and so forth. It's our ability to understand the minds of other people. So we can perceive if someone's feeling sad, if someone's upset, if someone's happy. So theory of mind lets us understand others' minds. And let me see, page 107. On page 107, you have table 3.7. And table 3.7, I'm not going to go over it word for word, but you want to mark this, because this shows you, goes over how a person develops, how a child from infancy through 5 years of age develops theory of mind. It's on page 107, table 3.7. This is how we understand each other. And a child has to learn about other people's beliefs and emotions and desires and thoughts. Of course, they have to learn about it for themselves before they can learn how to transition that to someone else. They have to see these things in themselves, their own beliefs, feelings, and desires, before they can see it from the perspective of someone else. And language development is connected to their development of their theory of mind. Because we talk about, don't we talk about how we feel? You know, think about a child who says, I'm sad, I'm happy. I don't know why I'm sad, okay? So they have to learn that language to be able to explain and realize why they're sad. So that's the development of those executive functions in theory of mind. Let me see if I have something else on here. Yeah, oops, back it up. There we go. Okay, so that takes us to the end of chapter 3. We would have gotten into chapter 4 if I hadn't had so much time spent on waiting for the computer. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you want to go over the section that you have marked as bilingual acquisition.
No, that was old notes. You can take that off. I just quickly grabbed the notes that I had from last year. So we'll talk about bilingual information later. Okay. Any other questions?
Before we move into another chapter, would you mind giving, or anyone in the class mind giving me Jean Piaget's view on the first page, chapter 3, the second one?
What are you talking about? Chapter 3, what?
The first page, whenever we start examining, Piaget's view
Uh-huh.
of development,
What blank do you need?
C,
Children constructed understanding.
I'm sorry,